A warm Friday afternoon on the Ohio Turnpike. A silver sedan sits motionless on the shoulder of the highway, hazard lights blinking rhythmically against the afternoon sun. Inside the car, an elderly woman in the back seat, frozen in shock. A wife gripping the steering wheel, her hands covered in blood. And in the passenger seat, a 69-year-old doctor with a single bullet wound to the head. The wife is screaming into her phone. Between sobs, she tells the 911 operator that a robber appeared out of nowhere. Short, dressed all in black, a mean, threatening voice. He demanded her husband's wallet, she heard a muffled pop, and then he vanished, speeding away in a black van that seemed to materialize and disappear like smoke. A random highway robbery, a senseless tragedy, a widow left to grieve. That's what everyone believed. That's what the evening news reported. That's what the community accepted as they gathered around the devastated wife to offer their condolences. But 30 miles back, at a service plaza in Portage County, a grainy surveillance camera had captured something strange. Something that didn't fit the widow's story at all. The footage showed Donna Moonda, hours before she would dial 911, looking directly at a man parked across the lot. Just a glance? 2 seconds? Maybe 3? The kind of look you give someone you know, someone you're expecting to see. That glance would unravel everything. Dr. Moonda had spent 40 years building something, not just a medical practice or a career, but a legacy that would outlast him. He came to America from India with a medical degree and not much else. Did his urology residency at Albert Einstein Medical Center in Philadelphia, learning American medicine while adjusting to a new country, a new culture, a new way of life. Then he settled in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, a small town in the western part of the state where he became the doctor everyone trusted. For decades, he worked at Sharon Regional Health System. Colleagues consistently used words like meticulous, dedicated, reliable. The kind of physician who remembered patients' names years after treating them. The kind who stayed late to answer questions. The kind who made you feel like you weren't just another appointment on a busy schedule. But it wasn't his medical career that truly defined him to his family. It was his wallet. That sounds crass, and I don't mean it that way. What I mean is that Moonda fundamentally believed success was meant to be shared. Testimony from relatives at the trial painted a picture of a man who had essentially lifted his entire extended family out of poverty, one check at a time. Cousins needed tuition for college? Gulam? Nephew starting a small business and short on capital? Gulam? Someone in the family needed surgery they couldn't afford? Gulam would find a way to make it happen. He was the family's center of gravity. The person everyone turned to, the one who never said no. Every Friday, without exception, he made the hour-long drive to a mosque in Youngstown for prayers. It was as fixed in his weekly schedule as his rounds at the hospital. He didn't talk about his faith or wear it on his sleeve. He just practiced it, quietly, consistently, year after year. At home, though, things were different. More complicated. People who knew the household described a man who valued order above all else. The house had to be kept quiet during certain hours. Meals had to be served at specific times. Routines had to be followed precisely, without deviation. Some people called this discipline and structure. Others called it rigid control. Here's what I've noticed after years of covering these cases. We want victims to be perfect. It makes the story cleaner, the emotions simpler. But real people are complicated. Dr. Moonda was generous to a fault with everyone outside his home, yet demanding and inflexible with those inside it. Both of those things were true. And understanding that complexity matters for what comes next, because it helps explain why his wife convinced herself she deserved something different. Donna Jean Moonda was the kind of person people instinctively described as bubbly. Born in 1959 in Bedford, Pennsylvania, a small mountain town, she grew up, became a nurse, was good at her job. Colleagues remembered her as competent with patients, warm with coworkers. She remembered birthdays, left little handwritten jokes in the break room to make people smile. That's the version of Donna everyone knew. There was another version hiding underneath, one she kept hidden from almost everyone around her. In 1998, Donna's father died. Something broke inside her after that loss. Federal court documents show she started using fentanyl around this time, the prescription painkiller that was just another medication back then, long before it became the drug that would devastate America. She was also dealing with depression and chronic insomnia. She self-medicated to dull the grief and kept on smiling in public. People who testified about her later said there was a noticeable shift after her father passed. The bubbly Donna became withdrawn, harder to reach. She was fighting demons nobody knew about, medicating herself while desperately trying to maintain the facade. For 6 years, she held it together. Then in 2004, the facade cracked. She got caught stealing prescription painkillers from her employer and was fired immediately. For a nurse, that's not just losing a job. That's losing a professional identity, a career, everything you spent years training for. Donna checked into Gateway Rehabilitation Center to get clean and try to rebuild. That's where she met Damian Bradford. Bradford was in his early 30s, roughly 15 years younger than Donna, small-time drug dealer from a completely different world than the one she inhabited. They sat in the same therapy circle, sharing their failures, their shame, their fragile hopes for something better. Rehab has a way of stripping away the barriers that normally separate people. The hedge fund manager and the homeless addict share the same room. The doctor's wife and the street dealer pour the same bad coffee. In that environment, something started between Donna and Damian that quickly went beyond mutual support in recovery. She started giving him things, not small tokens of affection, serious gifts, cash, lots of it, a car, an apartment, multiple cell phones so they could communicate secretly. Court testimony would later describe a relationship built as much on transactions as on genuine attraction. She had money and status. He had youth and attention. It was combustible from the very beginning. Back in Hermitage, Dr. Moonda seemed completely oblivious. His wife had completed her rehabilitation program. She was supposed to be better now. Normal life was resuming its rhythm. He had no idea she was spending thousands on another man. No idea about the secret phones, the hidden meetings, the entire parallel life she was building alongside their marriage. Here's where the money comes in, and I want to break this down carefully because it's crucial to understanding everything that followed. The Moondas had a prenuptial agreement. If Donna divorced Ghulam, she would walk away with approximately $250,000 plus some shared assets. That's substantial, but it wasn't enough to maintain the lifestyle she had grown accustomed to as a doctor's wife. And it certainly wasn't enough to keep funding an affair with a younger man who had expensive tastes. If Ghulam died while they were still legally married, the math changed dramatically. His estate was worth somewhere between $3 and $6 million. Here's a detail that stopped me cold when I was researching this case. According to what Bradford told investigators later, Ghulam actually offered Donna $1 million to walk away from the marriage. A clean break. No questions asked. $1 million free and clear. She said no. She told Bradford she wanted what she felt she deserved. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that word, deserved. It suggests something beyond greed. It suggests entitlement, resentment, the deep-seated feeling that life had somehow shortchanged her and someone owed her the difference. That one word explains more than any financial spreadsheet ever could. They didn't just talk about killing Moonda in abstract terms. They sat down and planned it, discussed scenarios, considered logistics. This wasn't a crime of passion building to an explosive moment. This was premeditated in the fullest sense of that word. The first idea was to attack Ghulam during his Friday mosque visits in Youngstown. Bradford would stake out the location, wait for the doctor to arrive alone, and make it look like a random robbery that turned violent. Week after week, he tried to find the right opportunity. Week after week, something went wrong. Too many witnesses, wrong timing, cars in the wrong places. The plan kept stalling out. Then came the trip to Toledo. Dr. Moonda's nephew was buying a house in the Toledo area, and Ghulam wanted to see the property himself, give his opinion on the investment, help out with the decision, as he always did with family matters. Donna saw the opportunity immediately. The morning of May 13th, she met with Bradford and handed him a printed copy of their entire driving route, told him exactly where they would be and when, gave him her cell phone number so she could signal their progress along the way. Then she went home, helped her elderly mother Dorothy into the back seat of the car, and started the drive to Toledo with her husband beside her in the passenger seat. Behind them, at a careful distance, Bradford followed in his own vehicle. Throughout the trip, Donna sent text messages, not to friends checking in, not to family members coordinating schedules, to Bradford, quick updates on their location along the turnpike, signals letting him know exactly where they were in the route. They stopped at a service plaza in Portage County somewhere along the way. Bathroom break, maybe coffee from the vending machines. Dr. Moonda had no reason to notice the man parked in a vehicle across the lot. Why would he? It was just another traveler at a rest stop. But Donna noticed him. The surveillance camera captured it, her gaze shifting to the side, finding Bradford's car, lingering for just a moment. A brief glance across the parking lot between two people who, according to the story she would later tell police, had never met before. That footage would become one of the most damning pieces of evidence in the entire case. Two people making eye contact who shouldn't have known each other existed. They got back on the turnpike. Another 30 minutes of driving into the late afternoon. Then Donna pulled the car onto the shoulder of the highway and stopped. Later, she would tell police she stopped because she was tired and wanted to switch drivers with her mother. Her mother Dorothy would give a different explanation entirely, saying she had a stomachache and asked Donna to pull over. The stories didn't match, but in the chaos and confusion of the immediate aftermath, investigators didn't focus on the discrepancy right away. A car pulled up behind them on the shoulder. A man got out and approached. Damian Bradford walked to the passenger side of the vehicle where Dr. Moonda sat. He demanded the wallet, playing the role of a highway robber. Then he raised a 9mm handgun and fired a single shot into the doctor's head. 69 years old. 4 decades of practicing medicine. An entire extended family held together by his generosity and support. All of it ended on the shoulder of the Ohio Turnpike on a Friday afternoon in late spring, with his wife sitting inches away. Bradford ran back to his car and sped away, heading east on the turnpike. As he drove, he threw the wallet's contents out the window, Credit cards, driver's license, papers, all scattered across the median and shoulder for investigators to find scattered over the following days. Donna reached for her phone and called 911, and the performance of her life began. When Ohio State Highway Patrol troopers arrived at the scene, they found a woman covered in her husband's blood, apparently hysterical, barely able to form coherent sentences through her sobbing. She told them about the robber, short man, dressed head to toe in black, with a mean and threatening voice. He came out of nowhere, she said, demanded the wallet. She heard a muffled bang, and then he was gone, vanished in a black van before anyone could react. She said she hadn't noticed anyone following them during the drive. Couldn't describe the attacker's face in any useful detail. Her memory was foggy, traumatized, unreliable. She was just a victim, just a widow now. In the following days, Donna gave tearful interviews to local television stations. The community responded with an outpouring of sympathy. People who knew the Moondas gathered around the devastated widow to offer comfort and support. But certain details weren't adding up. The wallet, for instance. Donna claimed the robber took it and fled with it as he escaped. But surveillance footage from the service plaza clearly showed her holding her husband's wallet during their stop there. If the robber took the wallet during the crime, why did she have it in her hands hours earlier at the rest stop? Then there was something else that emerged later in the investigation, a detail that still disturbs me whenever I think about this case. According to testimony that came out at trial, Donna had actually wanted Bradford to shoot her during the attack. Just a flesh wound, she suggested. Something superficial. Something to make her story more believable, to cement her status as a victim rather than a suspect. Bradford refused to do it. Think about that for a moment. Even while planning her husband's murder, she was worried about the credibility of her performance afterward. Worried enough to ask for a bullet in her own body. That's how calculated every aspect of this scheme was. Investigator Judy Neal took over the case and started methodically pulling at every loose thread she could find. Turnpike records came first. Every vehicle that entered and exited the highway system was logged with precise timestamps. By painstakingly cross-referencing all the times and locations, investigators could identify cars that had traveled the same route as the Moondas on that Friday afternoon. One vehicle's timing matched too perfectly to be coincidence. Cell phone records came next. This is where Bradford made his biggest and most fatal mistake. His phone pinged off cell towers near the Moonda home before the family even left that morning. Then it pinged towers along the turnpike as they drove, then at the service plaza, then near the location where the crime occurred. Digital breadcrumbs scattered the entire way, creating a clear trail of his movements throughout the day. But the real break in the case came from somewhere investigators hadn't expected. 6 days after the murder, a woman called the tip line. She gave her name as Charlene Farr. It didn't take long to determine her real identity. Charlene McFrazier, Damian Bradford's girlfriend. She knew about the affair with Donna, knew about all the expensive gifts, the apartment, the cars, the secret phones, and she knew, or at least strongly suspected, what Bradford had done for the doctor's wife. Jealousy? Maybe. Self-preservation? Probably. Revenge for being betrayed? Almost certainly. Whatever her exact reasons, that phone call brought investigators directly to Bradford's door with hard questions and harder evidence. Confronted with the cell tower data, the turnpike records, the surveillance footage from the service plaza, Bradford made a calculation of his own. He flipped. In exchange for avoiding the death penalty, he agreed to cooperate fully with prosecutors. He led investigators to the murder weapon, a 9mm handgun with the word "witness" stamped on its side, a detail that struck me as almost too symbolic. Ballistic testing confirmed it was the gun that killed Dr. Moonda. And then Bradford told them everything. The failed mosque surveillance attempts, the route printout, the signal text during the drive. Every single detail of how Donna Moonda had orchestrated and directed her husband's execution. Donna Moonda was indicted by a federal grand jury on August 16, 2006. The charges were severe: interstate stalking resulting in death, murder for hire, and firearms violations. The government announced they would seek the death penalty. The trial ran from June 18 through July 5, 2007. Inside that courtroom, two completely different narratives competed for the jury's belief. The prosecution laid out their case with methodical precision. They showed the text messages exchanged between Donna and Bradford during the drive. They displayed the printed route she had given him. They played the surveillance footage from the service plaza, freezing on that damning moment when Donna looked directly at her accomplice across the parking lot. They brought Bradford himself to the stand to testify about the planning, the failed mosque surveillance attempts, the conversations about money and what Donna felt she deserved. They traced every gift, every secret phone, every financial transaction between the illicit lovers. The defense painted a very different picture. They presented Donna as a woman fundamentally damaged by grief and addiction, emotionally dependent and fragile, possibly manipulated by a younger man who saw a vulnerable, wealthy woman and recognized an opportunity for himself. During the penalty phase, psychologists testified about dependent personality disorder as a mitigating factor. Friends and family members took the stand to describe the bubbly, generous woman they thought they had known before everything fell apart. What struck me reading through the trial coverage was the genuine shock from Donna's own family. They testified about the cheerful woman they knew. They hadn't known about the severity of her drug problem. They didn't know about the job loss. They had no idea whatsoever about the boyfriend. She had hidden entire chapters of her life from the people who loved her most. On July 6, 2007, the jury returned with their verdict, guilty on all counts. The penalty phase followed. The government was still seeking death. But after hearing testimony about Donna's childhood, her losses, her mental health struggles, the same jury that had convicted her chose life imprisonment instead of execution. On September 21, 2007, Donna Moonda was formally sentenced to life in federal prison. Years later, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals would review her case thoroughly and affirm all convictions. Was the sentence appropriate? I honestly don't know. Life in prison is one of the severest punishments our system can impose. But a man who dedicated his life to helping others was executed on the side of a highway because his wife decided she deserved his money more than he deserved to live. There's no sentence that truly balances that equation. There's a postscript to this case that I think reveals something important about who these people really were. Bradford cooperated with prosecutors, testified against Donna, served his time. He was eventually released from federal prison around December 2020. Less than 2 years later, he was back in the headlines. In 2022, he was involved in a violent confrontation at a convenience store that ended with a Pennsylvania state trooper getting shot in the leg. Bradford was convicted and sentenced to 36.5 to 73 years in state prison. Then he received an additional 10 years in federal prison for violating his supervised release, to be served consecutively after the state sentence. His own defense lawyers acknowledged during sentencing proceedings that this effectively means he will die behind bars. People have asked me whether Bradford was a predator who targeted a wealthy, vulnerable woman, or a pawn who got manipulated into violence by someone more calculating than himself. I think the truth is messier than either of those narratives. Two deeply damaged people found each other at rock bottom, fed each other's worst impulses, and built a deadly fantasy together. She provided the resources, the motivation, and the target. He provided the violence. Neither one of them was an innocent party in this tragedy. Dr. Ghulam Moonda's family still talks about his generosity, the relatives he helped through school, the patients who remember him with gratitude decades after he treated them, the way he showed up reliably every single Friday at the mosque in Youngstown. His murder wasn't random. It wasn't senseless in the way that word usually gets applied to violence. It was deliberate, calculated, planned over months by the person who slept next to him every night and shared his home. What haunts me about this case isn't the violence itself, it's that moment at the service plaza. Donna's eyes finding Bradford across the parking lot, a glance that said, "Soon, now." She knew exactly what was coming in the next hour, had planned every step meticulously, and she still went through with it, still got back in the car with her husband and mother, still drove another 30 minutes knowing what would happen when they stopped. The prosecution called it greed. The defense called it dependency and mental illness. I think it was something harder to name and more disturbing to contemplate. A toxic combination of resentment, entitlement, and the unshakable belief that she deserved a different life, and someone owed her the difference. Donna Moonda is currently in federal custody, serving her life sentence. Damian Bradford will almost certainly die in prison as well. Charlene McFrazier, the girlfriend whose jealous phone call cracked the case open, pleaded guilty to lying to investigators. And in western Pennsylvania, there's a family that's still missing the man who held them all together. This case reminded me of something I covered a few months ago, a similar pattern where a spouse convinced a lover to do what they couldn't bring themselves to do alone. There's something about that dynamic I keep seeing in these murder-for-hire cases. The person with the motive finding someone else willing to pull the trigger. It's cowardice dressed up as partnership. If this one got under your skin the way it got under mine, leave me a comment. I always want to know what you think, especially on cases like this one where the motives are so tangled up in money, resentment, and twisted ideas about what we deserve from life. Until next time.